The salty scene was a swell of icy waves, capsized sailboats, screaming men, crying children, and the horrendous, crackling howl of twisting steel. Chaos was abundant, and the fear was paralyzing. When Captain Benjamin Trudell awoke from his shipwrecked nightmare, he was quivering, covered in sweat, and desperately trying to shake the horrible spectacle he had witnessed in his dream. Clear as day, he watched the Western Reserve sink to the biting and bleak depths of Lake Superior. He watched the great ship snap in half, pulling itself and its crew to an icy grave. As he fixed his morning coffee and read the paper, he began to chastise himself for letting such a dramatic fancy overwhelm him. Captain Trudell was a stoic man, strong, disciplined, and practical. As he stood post at the Great Lakes Life-Saving Station, he decided not to call over to the Western Reserve. The reserve was set to sail from Cleveland, Ohio, and collect a load of iron ore from Minnesota. What were they to do? Forego the job because some captain in Michigan had a bad dream? Meanwhile, in Cleveland, Captain Albert Myers and his sons welcomed Captain Peter Minch, the owner of the Western Reserve and a former skipper himself, on board. Minch brought his wife and 2 young children along as a family outing. There was a budding summer storm potentially brewing, but the Western Reserve was a massive ship, top of the line, an engineering marvel. It was nothing that it could not withstand. On August 30th, 1892, the Western Reserve set sail with 27 souls on board. After a steady day of sailing, the storm did begin to blossom, and a forceful blow rippled through the ship. The force was so strong the mainsail came crashing onto the deck. The downed mainsail was not the worst issue, though. As the storm raged around the ship, it was clear that there was a crack in the deck, a crack that expanded and grew with each violent wave. The tide was literally pulling the ship in two. Frantically, the lifeboats were deployed. Minch, his family, and a few crew members clambered into a yawl. The remaining crew hurried onto other yawls, rushing to escape the now swiftly sinking Western Reserve. The storm at this point had become a total tempest. Gale force winds, rolling waves, and swiftly turning tides soon capsized the yawls, spilling the crew into the freezing water. Minch's lifeboat picked up 2 survivors, but now it was overloaded and far beyond capacity. It is incredibly difficult to capsize a yawl. They are designed to stay upright. You are actually at more risk of being hit by a flying boom or a loose piece of equipment than for the craft to actually turn over, which only adds to the realization of the severity of this storm, as it sent the last of the remaining yawls upside down. The children spluttered and struggled under the savage swells. Seasoned sailors were battered by the blinding winds, and the captain himself was pulled under by the bloodthirsty spirits of Lake Superior. Only one crew member, 24-year-old Henry W. Stewart, lived to tell the tale. Stewart was a wheelsman and a skilled swimmer. He contended against the tide for 2 hours to reach the shore, journeyed through dense forests, and finally reached the life-saving station. Stewart was the sole survivor. The tragedy took 26 lives and the cost of the Western Reserve at $200,000, the most expensive loss in the 19th century on the Great Lakes. When photos of the victims were printed in the press, Captain Trudell pointed at one and said, "That's Peter Minch." When asked how he knew that, he replied, "I saw him in my dream." 8 weeks after the Western Reserve came to her tragic demise, her sister ship, the W.H. Gilcher, disappeared during a storm, never to be seen or heard of again. It's likely that she too also broke in half, as the weather conditions were similar to the night the Western Reserve sank. Both ships had been built with a new experimental hull. They had steel hulls that were contaminated with phosphorus and sulfur, making them brittle, and affected their ductility. In the United States and Canada, new laws were created to ban the use of brittle steel in shipbuilding. However, the same laws were not applied in Britain. Had they been, it is likely that the RMS Titanic would still be afloat today. Neither the Western Reserve or the Gilcher have ever been found, but both have been seen sailing the waters of Lake Superior. Some witnesses report hearing fog whistles, laughter, screams, and shouting. In 2016, a YouTuber, Jason Asselin, even captured a video of a ghostly ship sailing directly towards him. The story of the Flying Dutchman is an infamous, legendary maritime tale. She is condemned for eternity to sail the seven seas. But it might surprise you to know that the Great Lakes in North America are known to have at least 5 ghostly vessels of their own. Not to mention the ships that are still moored on her shores, no longer sailing, but still crewed by the souls of the spirited sailors. Hey friends, it's Becca. For the past 3 years, the West London Witch team have been dedicated to bringing you the best supernatural stories at the highest studio quality. And by team, I mean me and my buddy Danny. We do this work totally for free because we love it. We're proud of our content and appreciate the wonderful interactions we get to have with storytellers and listeners just like yourself. If you're enjoying the West London Witch, maybe consider joining our Patreon. It's a way to further engage with us and show your support for two creatives. If you're in a position to spare enough each month for us to grab a cup of coffee in between edits or add to the piggy bank for a new microphone, we would love to see you in our Patreon community. But I know times are tough, so if you're not in a position to join Patreon right now, that's okay. We aren't going anywhere. Head on over to patreon.com/The West London Witch. For as little as £1, $1, €1 a month, you can gain full access to our coven, a space where we share behind-the-scenes stories, dive deeper into each episode, answer your questions, and have special little treats to thank you for sharing your love and kindness with your favorite little witch. Hello and welcome to episode 47 of The West London Witch, a podcast where we share stories about those moments where we find ourselves very much not alone. Today, we are heading to the shores of Lake Superior in Duluth, Minnesota, to visit a now decommissioned lake freighter known as the SS William A. Irvin. The ship, that was once owned by the United States Steel Corporation, is now under the care of the Duluth Entertainment Convention Center. The once iron ore ship is now a museum, but it's abundantly apparent that the Irvin is still manned by some of the original crew, even the captain himself. Today, Lucy, the communication director for the Duluth Entertainment Convention Center, is here to tell us all about the history of the ship, while paranormal investigator Chris Allen shares more insight on the hauntings. I'm Rebecca Strazina, and this is the West London Witch, episode 47, The Freighter of Fright.
Well, we are in Duluth, Minnesota, and this is a shipping industry place. And this is the time of year where it gets dark very early and in Duluth. So it's kind of an inherently spooky place when you're on Lake Superior and the water is lapping. And we have these gales this time of year. So there are big storms. And when you go out to our huge freighter. It's a historic 1938 freighter from U.S. Steel. It carried iron ore. And at one time, it was the flagship for U.S. Steel.
The William A. Irvin is a massive 610-foot long, bright red iron ore lake freighter that sailed across the Great Lakes from 1938 to 1975, finally fully retiring from service in 1978. She is now a museum and on the National Register of Historic Places. She is a stunning straight-decker laker who is surprisingly ornate and elegant for a working freighter.
But this time of year, it does seem to take on a darker tone because all the visitors who have come in the summer and filled it with its laughter and they're all on vacation have just gone away, and it's so much quieter. And this is the time of year that the staff that they are closing her up for the season, putting away all the china that had been used in the 30s, polishing all the brass and the woodwork for the last time of the season. And they all have these accounts of things they just can't explain. One of the things that has been told more than once and who by credible people is that you will go to certain parts of the boat and they'll say things like, oh, all the hairs stand up on my arm, or I just don't feel like I'm alone. But Jake, one of our maintenance people, says that he was walking into this back corridor and turned, and he saw a man with a big beard and a sailor's coat. And they made eye contact with each other. And then the man turned and walked through a wall.
Still to this day, Jake doesn't like to retell this interaction because he's a no-nonsense man. But he knows what he saw. And the spooky thing is, he isn't the only one to have seen this man.
So that sailor has been heard and seen by many people. Because it's a large ship with multiple layers, folks will often be on their own doing some sort of maintenance, and they'll hear footsteps on the metal stairs. They're great stairs, so it's definitely a sound that someone is walking up, and you call out and there's nobody there, or you'll just turn around because you feel like someone has tapped you and nobody is there.
But who could be haunting this very utilitarian ship? Well, there has been one very serious and horrific tragedy on board that could be a factor.
One of the things that happened on the boat was that in 1957, a sailor, William Warzo, he would have been in his later 50s, he tragically was scalded to death in the boiler room. And the most terrible part is it was a preventable death.
How exactly this accident occurred is very murky. I've read several different accounts ranging from a mishap while fixing a leaky pipe that inadvertently created an explosion of boiling water to erupt, from steam to the boiler engulfing him and sizzling the skin from his body. Regardless of how this workplace injury happened, it was avoidable and was so flagrantly negligent, the law was even involved.
And someone actually went to prison over the fact that safety protocol wasn't wasn't followed. But his voice has been picked up on various paranormal equipment from investigators, because we are a popular location. And they go down to the site of his death, and he has been recorded there, just saying his name. He apparently loved being a sailor, and his family has heard the recordings and feel like it does sound like his voice.
Paranormal investigator Chris Allen is no stranger to the ghosts on the Irvin. He's investigated the boat more than 24 times over the past 12 years. He himself has captured incredible evidence in the boiler room.
So one of the stories I have to tell is I worked with this guy named Ian, and I asked Ian to come along as take pictures and record video and things like that. And he was one of the naysayers at work and laugh and, oh yeah, Chris and his ghosts, this is going to be great. And so he went down there, and he's kind of giggling the whole time. He doesn't think anything's going to happen. He thinks it's a bunch of hooey. So we get down in the boiler room, which is one of the most haunted places on the William A. Irvin. And we're sitting there, and Ian is filming me, and we're doing a spirit box. And the spirit box says, "Don't touch the captain." And so I'm wondering what that means, Is the captain down here? So I'm asking, is the captain here? And they said yes. And I was like, oh, good. We got the captain, and maybe we can connect with William, who is supposed to be down in the boiler room because he lost his life there. So I'm getting all excited, and it says, "Don't touch the captain." So I'm like, oh boy, this is great. Is William here? And I'm getting no answer. And then a woman's voice comes on and says, "Don't touch him." And Ian is like, I'm hearing this. I don't know if I believe this or not. And all of a sudden, as he says that, he jerks and goes, "Oh my God." And he drops the camera and he says, "I just got touched." And I said, "Oh yeah?" I said, "Well, that's strange. Why were they saying don't touch the captain and then they touch you?" And Ian says to me, "Because my nickname is Captain Redbeard." And I didn't know that going down there. So he got touched and they were saying, "Don't touch the captain." It was two spirits talking to each other, telling each other, "Don't touch him." And then you could hear the one saying, "Don't touch him. Don't touch the captain." And it wasn't the captain of the ship at all. It was Ian got touched down in the boiler room.
Needless to say, Ian was a believer after that encounter. But getting back to William, Lucy was right when she said that he has been captured in the boiler room. And Chris has the evidence to prove it.
In the boiler room of the William A. Irvin is where William died. So we were able to find William's son in California. And we said, we've encountered voices of your father. That could be your father. And so we just wanted to let you know. And he says, "That's awesome, because my dad loved working on that ship. And he always said it was the best time of his life. So that's awesome that you're getting his voice. Next time you get his voice, could you tell him that I love him, and then record it and see what he says?" So we wound up recording, and I was with an older gentleman, and we asked if William was there, and they said yes. And we said, say somebody's name in the room. And he said, "The old guy." I don't know if he didn't know his name or what, but he said the old guy. And we said, okay, well, his name is Mike. Well, he said, "Hi, Mike." So then we said, "We contacted your son, and your son wanted you to know that he loves you." And he says, "Love back."
William is obviously a very intelligent spirit. But I think the most tragic reports of him are that William is known to come through and say that he needs to fix the boiler. The boiler is unsafe and it could hurt someone.
Another incident that has been recorded by many people is that when you go to the front of the boat, it's the pilot house. And the pilot house, it's where steering happens. It has the brass and the great big, where you would steer the ship and where you would call down to the boiler room. The lounge for the captain is there, as well as the suites. Because this was a flagship boat, they would entertain fancy guests on board. So there is sleeping for like 12 people in beautiful bedrooms up there. There has been a sighting of a little girl. They call her Maggie, and no one really knows where she comes from, but we give tours on this boat. And actually, my daughter was a tour guide when she was in high school, and she was closing up the boat and could hear a little girl's voice singing nursery rhymes. And she and her fellow tour guide just made haste out of there because there's just absolutely no reason for a child to be on board.
Hauntingly, Maggie has been known to be hiding under beds in the staterooms. She touches people as they roam from room to room in the pilot house, and she's heard singing nursery rhymes all to herself.
We were in the suites in the front of the William A. Irvin, and one of the suites we encountered a little girl who we found out calls herself Maggie. We were asking for Maggie to come, and all of a sudden we saw this ghost-like figure of a little girl. So we started snapping pictures really fast. And we only got it looks like a little ribbon, almost like a mist or something in the place that we saw the little girl. And then we felt something like tugging our ankles. So I immediately put the camera down and took a picture, and that picture is totally whited out. There's like a big white mass in the middle of the picture. So I took another picture a control picture so that I got exactly what it looks like under there. And as I took that one in the corner, there's like a little, I don't know if it's an orb or it could be a foot or a hand or something. There's a little white thing.
Head on over to the West London Witch Facebook or Instagram. Take a look at this photo and see what you make of this anomaly.
And lots of people have seen this little girl in that room. When we had like a Paracon up here, some of the ghost hunters and famous people from all the ghost shows came up, and they took a Ouija board into that room. And that's when they got the name of the girl was Maggie.
And she does seem to be a playful spirit, but more than one tour guide has turned in their badge over her because she is a trickster. Another medium has come on and feels that the captain, Captain, I believe Richard McDowell, is still there. And he is upset because he believes the ship is still seaworthy. And why is it still in port? And why are these strangers on his boat when they should be out on Lake Superior making an iron ore run? And he shows his displeasure by slamming things and making noises and scaring the crew. So that is his claim to fame. He is in that pilot house area, and it does seem that when paranormal investigators come, he prefers to talk to the young women and no one else.
When we went up in that area, I took a news team from our area, our NBC affiliate, and it was the weather guy and the news anchor. And as we went up there, we went through the back of the area where the captain lives. And when I knocked on the captain, they have like this glass thing that shows off his uniform. And so I knocked on that, and I did the old shave and a haircut, and we heard, and the two of them, like their eyes got really wide, and we tried to figure out what it was. And we walked around his office and his living quarters, pressing everything, trying to see what it was. And they have one of those old Morse code things that they used to touch. And when we touched that, we figured out it was that made those two clicks. So we thought we were with the captain, and we went to the front room and we used the spirit box. And that's when the spirit box said, "Hello, Jen," which is the anchor woman.
Instantly, Jen, the anchor woman, left the ship, truly astonished and terrified. But the story doesn't end there, because 2 weeks later, Chris was back with another news team, and both of their names were called out on the spirit box.
And that's happened quite a bit up in the captain's quarters. We usually get names. One particular time I went on the ship by myself and I did a Facebook Live, and some of the people were talking to me and they were saying, will it say our names? And sure enough, a little bit into the broadcast, the spirit box said the names of 4 of the people that were on live with me on Facebook Live.
This fascinating phenomenon just lends further credibility and credence to the idea that there are intelligent spirits aboard the Irvin.
We had somebody that went up in the front and her name was Danielle, and the spirit box said, "Hi, Danielle." I mean, that's not a name that you would hear very often or mistake for another name or hear part of it and then try to read into it. It's the actual name that says hello.
Perhaps the full-bodied apparition of the bearded sailor Jake saw on the deck could be the spirit of the captain checking on his crew. The Irvin was decommissioned because it was not financially tenable for her to keep sailing, but she definitely had plenty of life still in her. So it's understandable why the captain would be upset at her decommissioning.
The biggest bizarre story that I've ever heard is a couple of the maintenance people, and still happening to other maintenance people, is they see what they think is the captain. And so when you get in the ship, on the outside of the ship, there's like a place that crewmen can go, and that's used for storage. And a lot of times they would put the suitcases, they would take the suitcases from the clients that were traveling and then they'd put them in these side storage areas. There's been lots of stories of a captain looking person that's hanging out there that just all of a sudden appears and disappears. And a couple of the maintenance people, when I heard their story, they had said that this captain person was yelling at them. Like they were working and not working fast enough, kind of yelling at, not anything like the captain was mad. It was more of like a, get busy sort of thing.
As incredible as it is to encounter the captain, it's widely understood that he is just invested in making sure his vessel is running in a ship-shape fashion. He is in death much as he was in life. And the pilot house isn't the only place that's haunted. The crew area towards the back of the ship is also very active. And it is not a welcoming and friendly place.
So in the back of the William A. Irvin, there's like 4 bunk beds per room, and there's 5 rooms back there. And then there's a dining room and a kitchen just for the crew. And I've been in the back, and one time we were doing a candle exercise that we do where you light a candle, and when you ask questions, you tell them if someone is there, please move the flame. And you really have to have the right conditions for that, because if it's windy in there, you can't, it's not going to count. But we got it to stand straight up and down, and we were back in there and asking questions. And when we asked if there was someone near, the flame moved. And it was about that time that there was a girl in the group, and she said, "I think I just saw a shadow person come around the corner." And so I started looking, and sure enough, both of us were seeing the shadow figure peek around the corner at the same time. So I decided to go investigate. And as I got into the last room, I felt like a pushback. And that was kind of all that happened on that particular visit. So then the next visit, I decided, okay, I'm going to go back there and see what's going on. And then we ran the spirit box in the dining room. And as I went back there, I started messing with stuff. It's got, to show people when they take the tour, it's got boots that they would have worn in uniforms and things like that. And then they have a made bed just to kind of show what it was like. And when I went back there, I was messing with the boots and the uniforms and moving, changing them around and everything. And the spirit box kept telling us to stop. Tell him to stop. Tell him to stop. And it kept happening over and over. And then they said, "What are you doing, Chris?" And I told them, "I'm in here messing around with his clothes and moving his boots around and stuff like that." And we've encountered this person a couple of times in the back of the ship.
What's so interesting about that story is that Lucy herself has witnessed similar activity in the crew area. However, what she witnessed was so terrifying, she literally packed up and abandoned ship.
We were out there till about 2 a.m., and it's just starting to turn cold in Duluth, and we were all bundled up. But we went to the crew quarters, which you can picture are bunk beds and small, tight little rooms. And this one investigator was kind of reading feelings. She also had a device that would print out words that it was picking up through electronic vibration. And this spirit in one of these rooms did not want her to be in his room, going in his closet, going through his things, not wanting her to touch his boots, which we still have, and his coat. And she cried out in pain, and she had a scratch mark on her back that she did not have before. And it was definitely a fresh scratch mark. And we decided we should leave.
There's only one recorded death on the Irvin, the sailor in the boiler room. So how did the captain, the angry sailor in the crew quarters, and Maggie come to haunt the Irvin? It is possible that perhaps the captain and the crew have come back because they love the ship. It's home to them. But that doesn't explain Maggie.
A psychic on board who came on board believes that because the boat is in water and Lake Superior is just such a spooky place, that it is a place where there are more spirits than there that were actually associated with the boat, that it's they use the water as a medium and they reside there. So that might be where our Maggie comes from.
I love this theory. Water is known to be a great conductor for spiritual activity, and Lake Superior alone has seen an awful lot of death and tragedy. At least 350 ships have been lost to the inky waters of Lake Superior, North America's largest lake, and well over 10,000 people have perished in the perilous waters. However, those are realistically conservative numbers, for we will never know truly how much death Lake Superior has seen. She is so deadly, there is a horrible saying that states, Lake Superior never gives up her dead. It is entirely possible that spirits end up on the Irvin that may have nothing to do with the vessel itself, but rather the water that it resides in.
These are just some of the tales, and I will hope that some of your listeners might have to trek out to Duluth and check it out themselves.
Do you have a spooky story you'd like to share? I'd love to hear it. Drop me an email at thewestlondonwitch@gmail.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at The West London Witch. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. And come and follow us for additional content on Instagram and Facebook. Until next time, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. The West London Witch is created by me, Rebecca Strazina. Our sound designer and production magician is the incredible Danny Cross. Our theme music was bespokely written and performed by the wickedly talented Kyle Hall. Our cover art is the beautiful collaboration between Lizzie Wilson and Jake Bowser. Special thanks to Miss Sinead Bowers, our quality control and biggest cheerleader. And thank you to you, all of our listeners all over the world. These are your stories. Thank you for sharing them with us.